Hello and welcome to Full Disclosure, a podcast project conceived entirely to let me spend more time than I'd ever get on the radio with interesting people. And I hope you're not offended, Charles Dance, when I tell you that I didn't actually realise just how interesting you are.
Good Lord. I hope you're not going to be disappointed.
Well, I'm definitely not going to be disappointed. I was familiar with the career, of course, although perhaps not the full depth and breadth of it. But I didn't know anything at all about your journey into acting. And I know, I can tell from interviews that I've read with you in the past, you find it quite frustrating that people presume that your background matches some of the most famous characters you've played.
Well, it's not that it's frustrating. It's that, I just feel obliged to correct people who have an opinion of me based on something, on lies that they've read, you know.
So it's this idea that you're the sort of love child of the Duke of Windsor and so.
Yes, quite, yeah.
Because it was humble beginnings in Redditch of all places. It's just up the road from where I grew up in Kidderminster.
Well, actually, Redknapp.
Oh, okay. Well, that same neck of the woods, though.
Yeah.
Yes.
But like between Redknapp and Bromsgrove.
Yes, I know it very well.
Yeah.
Near Chaddesley Corbett.
Really?
Yes, which is the name of, if I ever write a book about a fictional 19th century detective, he will be called Chaddesley Corbett.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, you should. Please write it.
But you weren't there for long.
Well, no, because my father died when I was 3.5, I think, and Mum married the lodger and moved down to just outside Plymouth, actually.
I presume you can't remember your old man.
I can't. I have this vague image of this man in a raincoat. He was bald, tall, bald-headed, with a raincoat, carrying some kind of briefcase. And I was playing beside the house, and there was an old Belfast sink leaning against a wall. And he came in, looked at the sink, just pulled it away from the wall and put it back. And I, as children tend to do, went and copied him and pulled this Belfast sink, and it promptly fell and broke my ankle. Oh. Right. And then there was a thing with plaster of Paris and a surgical boot. But no, that is my only memory. Now, I don't know whether it was my father or whether it was Edward who became my stepfather.
The loss of your father was hardly surprising, given how I couldn't. This is one of the things I mean about doing double takes as I researched this meeting, is that he fought in the Boer War.
He did. I didn't find that out until I did the television show Who Do You Think You Are?
Yes.
Somebody told me that this photograph, this man in a military uniform, my father, suggested that he'd fought in the First World War. This is this uniform. And this military advisor said, actually, no, it's the Boer War. And I said, oh, my God, then the ages are wrong here, because my mother told me, bless her, that he was 59 or 60 when he died. Well, he actually didn't have me until he was 73.
Gosh.
Oh, yes. Skeletons in closets, James.
Well, and I suppose generationally at that time, your mother would have been very conscious of what the neighbours thought, would she? Or
that's quite a good point. Yes, possibly she would have been, actually, thinking back to various things in my time with my mother, bless her.
And how conscious of loss were you? Because that's very, very young, and it seems as if your stepfather stepped into the breach quite gamely.
Indeed. Well, my mother did say, when your father died, I had 10 bob left in the world, dear.
It is so at odds with the patrician sort of misrepresentation of you, isn't it? It's
Edward stepped into the breach.
Yes.
But I have no memory of being told my father had died, no memory of a funeral. I don't know whether he's buried or cremated.
Really?
Or, no, absolutely nothing.
And there's no sense, I mean, a therapist would ask if there was any sort of gap or absence inside you or any sense of...
Well, I've had therapy
yes.
a couple of times. We haven't... I mean, that is an area that really I would quite like to dive into, although... and I don't want to digress too much, but
digress away.
Okay. Well, when there was a wonderful researcher when I did Who Do You Think You Are? My brother and I don't share the same father. He wasn't told that by my mother.
This is Michael.
until 6 months before she died.
Gosh.
Right? And came home, "I've got something to tell you, dear," And he wrote to me, and he was in the Navy at the time, and like a lot of military people, and a lot of the writing was to do with military exercise and manly stuff, not much to do with emotions. Yeah, do you know? As a postscript at the end of a letter, "By the way, at the age of whatever it was, I've just found out I'm a bastard." And I thought, "What was this?" So I rang him up, and he said, "Yeah, Mum came round. She's got something to tell you." And she told me. So I said, "Who is my father?" And he said, she either didn't know or couldn't remember.
God bless. Gosh.
Quite a shock.
Isn't it?
Now, I then, after my programme, I rang up the researcher and said, "Look, it's probably not possible, but it'd be great because my brother," and I call him my brother because he was my boyhood hero. He's 10 years older than me. And it would be great if we could find out who his father was. And so, anyway, by virtue of him having a DNA test and that going into this DNA bank, it's vast, in a very short time, we came up with two very, very likely suspects.
Gosh.
One I think we could eliminate, but we couldn't take it any further because the prime suspect's son is the same age as my brother. He's not well in hospital. His son tried to persuade him to have a DNA test. I think the poor man might have left us by now.
Sure.
Anyway, that's as far as we got. But we think that this particular one is probably the father. But, I found out stuff purely by looking. I said, "Have you got your birth certificate, Mike?" And there is an address of where he was born, which is 88 Highgate Hill or something.
Yeah.
Well, that, of course, was a hospital. It's a hospital.
Right.
It was another hospital before that. Before that, it was the workhouse.
God.
And single women having children out of wedlock, the details on the birth certificate, well, it wouldn't be St. Margaret's Hospital or whatever. They just gave the address. So I knew where he was born. I knew where my mother was living at the time. But, all the stuff about who looked after her.
Gosh.
When she was pregnant. This is 1936, when a lot of women had the children taken away from them.
Yes.
They were put into kind of asylums or something, in some cases. But she was there and she had my brother and then met my father because she was a waitress at Lyons Corner House. She was called, they were called nippies because they nipped around between the tables with trays laden with food. And that's where she met my father, who was a widower, although later she told me that actually he was a divorcee. But, a lot of things she said didn't really concur with what had actually happened. However, there you are.
She sounds remarkable. She sounds as if she sort of almost assembled security through muscle. She muscularly assembled security for herself and her son.
Very good. Yeah, it's a very good way of putting it. She was the youngest of 4 children, and her first job was as an under-house parlourmaid at the age of 13. That's the lowest of the low, The poor girl who gets up before, the rest of the house is still asleep, to blacken the stove and empty the grates and everything, because she didn't have very much by way of schooling.
And did she talk to you about those days much? Did she?
Hardly at all.
No. Because she'd moved far.
Well, she did say that Pop, as she referred to her father, he went off to the First World War in 1914, but he didn't come back till 1920 because he was shacked up with Mademoiselle from Armatier. That's what she said.
So it's not so much a family tree as a family arboretum.
Very good.
Because you also discovered, I think on Who Do You Think You Are, that you had a sister that you'd know nothing about on your father's side.
Yes, yeah.
That was Nora.
Yes, indeed. And when I did that show, Nonine, who is my great niece, who I met in Pretoria, she pulled out this trunk and opened it, and there was, stuff in there. Watercolour paintings that my father had done, photographs that I'd not seen of him, plus a biography written by Sister Nora, who died in 1992, I think.
Right.
Neither of us knew the other existed. No. But it was done on a typewriter, but beautifully written, I have to say. And there were chunks in there about my father, of course, that I didn't know, and her, and her life with him. And so I was able to tell my children a lot more about me than anybody else told me about me.
Gosh, how extraordinary. Do you allow yourself slightly, I don't know what you'd call them, soppy moments? Do you imagine Nora watching you on a scroll, or think she almost certainly would have seen you in something and not known who you were?
Yes, I have thought of that from time to time. Yeah, yes.
No indications yet of the direction that your life would take. So, what was primary school like? You've relocated by now. Your mum is running a small boarding house, I think, for sort of travelling salesmen.
Very good. Yeah.
So there's about 3 film plots here already, isn't there? You're only 6.
Yeah. I can remember. St Stephen's Primary School, Saltash, which is just over the River Tamar into Cornwall.
Right.
It's probably part of Greater Plymouth now, I suspect. But I can remember. The only thing I remember about that was hearing voices saying, "The King's dead. The King's dead." So that is when I was there. But, he died in 1953, 54, I think
so, yes.
Well, but that's my first memory.
So there's no sort of scholastic memories? There's no sort of...
No.
You don't...
Not until we moved... I don't know whether they probably didn't own the boarding house for commercial travellers, but then moved, and we then were living in Plymouth, and I went to Drake Primary School. I can remember being kicked either purposely or by accident in the nose by Malcolm Timmins. I can remember his name to this day. and a teacher at the school called Mr. Palethorpe. And you know the expression, it's a singer, not the song. And I found I liked Mr. Palethorpe, and I got the impression that he liked me, and we got on well. I'm what's called a late developer.
Yes.
I failed the 11 plus and went to an overage school, but I was recruited by the church in the local naval base, Devonport Dockyard, to be in the naval church choir because I could sing quite well. So I was a choir boy for a bit, but then asked to leave because I was rather badly behaved. Another choir boy and I we used to giggle at what people in the congregation were wearing.
What did you enjoy during this sort of childhood? What were your
art and sport?
Was it games and sport and art?
Games and sport and art. I was quite good at telling stories.
Okay.
And I can remember being asked, "Oh, Charles, will you come and tell us a story?" I don't know, but I don't remember any of the stories I told, but I do remember arriving at a point when I had begun to develop a stammer, and I thought, I can't tell stories anymore.
So it was about 13 when that happened. 13, 14.
Yeah.
And do we know why? Do we have any idea why? Because your mum was poorly, wasn't she? Your mum had a pretty bad breakdown before that.
She did. Maybe that has something to do with it. I mean, she took me to a speech therapist.
Right.
And physically there was nothing wrong. But that's the way my adolescence manifested itself.
Oh, of course.
You know, with some people, it's acne or badly behaved,
Yes.
and it's a difficult time for those of us going through it and those of us near people going through it.
And it means you can't, you certainly can't interact as much as you would have liked to do.
I used to make up the most complicated sentences to get round words I couldn't manage.
Oh, how interesting.
I didn't want to be seen to be a stammerer. I know one or two people. One was an accountant, who I don't think is with us anymore, and another is a very good actor who has a stammer when he's not acting. And they kind of get through it. You develop things like stamping a foot when you arrive at a word that you know you're going to stammer on. But no, I used to make up these long sentences. And I've met a young actor recently, a kid I worked with, really talented. And I thought, there's something going on here. And I realized he was doing what I did. And I met his father, because I'd kind of put him in the direction of one or two people how I could help him. And I said to his father, I said, how long has Eddie stammered? He said, oh, you know that? I said, yes, I do, yeah. And I told him that the same thing. I said, but I said, hopefully the same thing will happen to him as happened to me, that gradually, by about 18, words that I had problems with, suddenly I could say. So I could then also perhaps talk to a girl.
Well, that's got to be a big development, hasn't it? That's got to be. But so it disappeared as suddenly as it arrived, almost.
It disappeared slowly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And
that must be quite torturous, though, because you're terrified constantly that it's going to come back.
Oh yes, and very, very rarely, but there are occasions when, I don't know what it is, but the last time it happened, I was doing Shadowlands, sobbing my guts up, 8 shows a week for 6 months, And there was one of those nights, and the thing about working in the theatre, if you get 5 nights out of 8 that are good,
yes,
that's pretty good going, okay?
Yeah.
The 3 that are not so good, hopefully, well, probably the audience won't notice, but we notice it.
Right.
Whether the timing just goes off slightly. And there was one night, and I started to say a sentence, and there was a sound coming up, and I just had to stop. And I just breathed for a bit, and then it was fine. But the terror, yes, I thought, oh my God. I mean, it is a terrible affliction.
Yes. Did you see the footage of Joe Biden with the little boy who had a stammer?
No, I never did. No.
It was a magical thing where he just really, because he was a stammerer himself,
right?
Biden, and the boy's father had sort of tracked him down and almost staked out a public appearance in the hope that Biden would offer some words of encouragement to his stammering son.
Right.
And it was a thing of genuine beauty. It was an incredible moment.
Oh, okay.
And it makes acting probably the daftest possible ambition you could have developed.
Very strange. But when I guess I had fun at primary school.
Yes. There's something very poignant about kids who have a wonderful time at primary school and then get to secondary school and it's all a bit too much for them, or something happens and they can't, the cogs don't quite mesh in the way that they did do at primary school. Yeah. You're conscious of that even as a youngster, and then a stammer comes in and makes everything.
Yeah, yes, indeed, because the fun that I'd had, disappeared. And the other thing about my mother, bless her, she would, I remember her saying sometimes, "Stop showing off, child. Stop showing off." It's the worst thing you can say to a child.
It's very Victorian.
I think, go on, show off more.
Be more self-conscious, she's saying. Be less free.
But very strange, because she was so proud of my father. What little she said about him was always in very glowing terms. She referred to him as WD. And one of the things that I have that was found in the trunk that Noreen brought out was a gold medal for elocution that my father had.
Gosh.
Yes. And I know that he used to do kind of, apparently, humorous recitations. The boy stood on the burning deck, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Do you know?
So he liked a bit of spotlight, a bit of attention. And your mother liked that he liked it, but she probably just didn't want you to be sticking your head too far above the parapet in case Someone took a pop at you.
Yeah, yeah.
So when did the voice appear? When did your fondness for humorous recitations first?
Well, because as the stammer went, the confidence came back.
Right.
And I was at Leicester School of Art doing graphic design and photography. And there was a college theatre group that I became part of because I found I was able to speak. Right? And we took a production to a student drama festival in Zagreb, where I got the most terrible case of the shits. I remember that there. So I was beginning to explore, and then towards the end of my 3 years of a dip AD, as it was called then, I thought, I don't want to do this. I want to be an actor. And I'd had a friend who had spent around about when I was 16 or 17 back in Plymouth. He went to RADA.
Gosh.
He was terribly grand, actually, a tall, very good-looking guy. And I can remember saying to him, in my strange accent, which is a cross between a Midlands accent and Plymouth,
Gosh.
Awful sound. And I remember saying to him, what are you going to do when you leave school? He said, I'm going to RADA. I didn't know what RADA was. I didn't know drama schools existed. I said, what's that? He said, the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. I said, oh okay. No. And then as I was leaving Leicester, when I decided I didn't want to do it, I rang him up. He was spear carrying at Stratford and said, because I knew he'd been coached by two rather extraordinary old men.
Back in Plymouth?
Back in Plymouth. And I said, can you give me the telephone number of the man you were coached by? So he gave me this number, and I rang this number. And this voice, Loddiswell 249. And I said, hello, is that Mr. Bennet? Yes, who's that? I said, my name's Charles Dance. I want to go into the theatre. He said, oh, God. And gave me the name and address of a pub and told me to meet him there next Wednesday. And I did. I knew where this pub was. And I'd heard about this man from Stephen, that was the name of my friend. And I walked into this pub, and this is a typical country Devon pub with spittoons on the floor and smoke. Do you remember those days? Smoke in pubs. And there, sitting in the middle of the pub, surrounded by a little group of young men, was this chap who looked like Samuel Beckett. And he peered at me over his glasses and said, Charlie Dance? I said, yes. He said, get me a pint of mild boy. Handed me an empty glass. And then dismissed these young men. And then as I was filling up his glass, a pint of mild, I could hear, Leonard's got himself another young man. And he got me to sit down. I sat down opposite. He said, drop your jaw, boy. I didn't know what he meant. He said, open your bloody mouth. So I sat like this, with him looking in my mouth. And he said, oh, you've got a closed throat, boy. It's going to be a long job. No. He said, and get your hair cut. My hair then was quite long. And he explained that the forehead is a third of your face. So a great deal of your expression is illustrated by what happens in your forehead. And he said, as it is, I can hardly hear you, boy. If I can't see you, then there's no bloody point, is there? So get your hair cut. No. And I was working as a builder's labourer at the time. And I did get some of it cut.
So he took you seriously immediately?
Yeah, he did, actually.
Why?
I don't know. Maybe I gave the impression that I really wanted to learn something.
When you rang Stephen, I thought you were going to be asking him for advice on getting into drama school.
No, because I knew perfectly well that there was no way that I could get into. I couldn't afford. I'd had a grant for 3 years for Leicester.
You'd used up your educational allowances, so to speak.
And I thought maybe there's another way in to this.
What was Leonard's story?
Leonard, he was an extraordinary man. He lived with Martin, who was... Martin was half German, and Martin looked like Bertolt Brecht. So we got Samuel,
What a pair!
Samuel Beckett and Bertolt Brecht.
Sounds like the worst music hall act in history, doesn't it?
And
Yes.
they had met at York Rep about 200 years before I met Leonard, and Leonard had TB,
Right.
and they got out of. Whether they were living in London or I don't know, but they replied to an ad in the Telegraph for a gypsy caravan that was for sale. And they moved down to Devon, and there was this gypsy caravan in a field. And over a few years, they built this funny little shack of a cottage. It was like something like in deepest Provence or somewhere. It was more French than English. You'd have to have an ordnance survey map to be able to find it. And Leonard he was fiercely bright. He had a double first in modern languages, right? And he had trained with a very famous drama acting coach in Paris called Coppo. And he'd gone to wanting to learn, and Coppo had said, come back in 6 months' time speaking fluent French, and I'll teach you. Well, he one of his degrees, so he could speak French. Anyway, this is what Leonard told me.
Yes.
I suspect a percentage of it is not
A bit of dramatic license.
strictly true.
Yes.
But, so I spent 2 years with both of them.
Doing menial jobs.
I'm working...
And meeting them in the pub in the evenings.
Yeah, I did about 2 evenings a week with Leonard, and I would dig the garden for Martin on Sundays. And Leonard had this wonderful voice. He'd take his teeth out because his voice was just as grand as it was. And he used to smoke Gitans cigarettes.
Yes.
Martin didn't smoke. Martin didn't go out because he was of that generation of gay men who lived in fear of a dawn raid and didn't guarded their privacy.
And you were aware of this?
Yeah.
You knew you did
Yeah, well, a few years later, Leonard did say to me, you do realise that Martin and I are homosexual, boy. I said, of course I do, Leonard. He said, we're not gay.
Oh, that's quite...
Oh, yeah.
Gosh.
But Martin, so I would get all this sort of acting stuff from Leonard and voice work, because he said, we've got to do something about your voice, boy. It's dreadful. And Martin would... I would dig the garden for him, and I can remember Martin sitting on an old log watching me, digging with a cigarette hanging out of my mouth. He would say, Charlie, I want Martin. Come and sit down, boy, sit down. No. He said, enjoy your cigarette, because at the moment you're not digging very well and you're not really enjoying the cigarette. He said, so smoke the cigarette and then go back to the digging. Little gems.
Aren't they?
Imparted.
Great, yes.
Yeah.
Could you feel yourself improving? Did you feel
yes
vistas opening up in front of you? Because
Well,
it
I
sounds
don't know about-
implausible,
Well,
doesn't it?
certainly, I was beginning to think, and I adored both of them.
Yes.
No. And I'd never really looked at Shakespeare before. And I think one of my jobs was a plumber's mate for the Plymouth Water Board. It's a rather glamorous title, a plumber's mate. You're labouring. You dig the hole, the plumber does the skilled work, and you fill the hole back up again. And on wet days, despite the fact that we had all been issued with foul weather gear, most of the plumber's mate didn't want to wear that. We'd just sit in the van until it stopped raining. And I would get out my complete works of Shakespeare and sit in the corner while they were reading either the equivalent of The Sun or Sporting Life or something, and saying, what are you reading, Charlie? What you got there? You reading a book, boy? And one grabbed the book and said, oh, fucking hell, that's bloody Shakespeare. And so I would be ribbed quite a bit.
But it touched you. It reached you. These weren't just words dancing around on a page in front of you. You felt, because you had such good tutors, you connected with the text.
Yeah. And it was to do with technique. One of the first things we worked on with Julius Caesar, and he'd said to me, he said, I want you to learn Mark Antony, boy. I said, which bit? He said, all of it. So by next week, I'd learned a fair bit, and we working on a speech of Mark Antony's.
When did you start thinking that, or perhaps Leonard decided that it was time to actually roll the dice?
Well, we got to a point over about 2 years. And Leonard
this is a mad apprenticeship, isn't it? Absolutely bonkers.
Yeah, fantastic.
But you knew in your bones it was working.
Well, the first job I got was I was a dresser on Fiddler on the Roof. I dressed all the chorus boys on that.
What theatre was that at?
Her Majesty's, the bottom of the Haymarket.
So how did you get that? Was that an advert in the stage?
He put me in touch with a production manager that he knew in the West End. So I've got this young man, sort him out, give him a job or something. So I was a dresser, I think, for £16 a week then or something, But I was in a theatre.
And that was it?
He'd said to me, he said, when you're out of work, boy, don't drive a cab or work as a barman. Do something inside a theatre.
Again, very good advice.
Be in there.
Yeah.
Watch other actors, Yeah.
So there's I'm not sensing that you had any, because that's good advice, but at the same time, you might not want to be not acting in a theatre. You might not want the other actors to see you not acting in a theatre, to see you doing a job that's not acting. You didn't have any, what's the word I'm looking for? You were just really hungry for experiences. You weren't second guessing anything or just so grateful to be there that you weren't.
Sure, yeah. But I bought a copy of The Stage,
yes,
which is a trade newspaper that used to say about The Stage, nobody confesses to buying it, but all will admit to reading it.
Yes.
Okay, and there are the back pages, There'd be all sorts of people, from variety artists to, magicians, conjurers, or whatever, unexpectedly vacant till 1986 or something, And there was an ad for a provincial theatre, yes, Prince of Wales Theatre, Colwyn Bay, looking for actors for a repertory season, and it was weekly rep.
What year was this? This is the early 70s now, is it? Or there or thereabouts? Late 60s?
Late 60s.
And there's no sense yet, Charles, of you thinking that it's a world that's impossible to get into. There's a sort of rather neat progression here, a perfectly plausible ambition, which is not true. It's not a plausible ambition for someone who's just left art college and moved back to Plymouth. It's one of the or someone who had a stammer and then is knocking about with two old boys who are offering a very unconventional tutelage, and yet there's no sense at all of you being overawed by it or thinking, "Oh, this is never going to happen." It's quite a natural progression.
No, I was determined.
Yes.
That's all. And I had confidence. They gave me confidence. What I lacked in experience, they gave me confidence. And I knew that they had taught me stuff about the technique. Coward is well-worn phrase of Noel Coward's, learn the lines and avoid the furniture.
Yes.
I made the mistake of saying to Leonard in one week, talking about something we were working on, and I said, what's my motivation? He said, your pay packet at the end of the week, boy. And it was to do with technique. And also knowing when you're bad. There was one week when I thought I'd been pretty bloody good, and I ran Leonard back from the back room of a pub to their little cottage, and he got out of my minivan and said, you don't realise how bad you are, do you, boy? See you next week. And bang, shut the door
thanks,
on
Leonard.
Christ. Yes, but very important, because we are surrounded by people who say, wonderful, darling.
Yes. I'm going to jump forward a bit because I just want to know, and I don't want the interview to end before I've asked you, did he witness much of your success?
No, kind of. Leonard came to see a production of Three Sisters in which I played Solione at the Greenwich Theatre. He came to see that. That's the only time he saw me doing something on the stage. They didn't have a television, so they didn't see me in The Jewel and the Crown, which was my break, but they certainly read about it. But when he came,
So he knew that he'd set you on a path to stardom. And that's,
yes.
wow.
Well, what they said, I mean, the most lavish praise they ever gave me was not bad. Not bad, boy, not bad.
And how did your mum process it all?
Oh, she was very proud. Of course she was. Yeah. But I mean, it wasn't. They also, Leonard said, the thing about you, Charlie, that you work. You're a hard worker.
Yes.
Because this is what I wanted to do.
Yes.
And when I got my first job in a theatre, I felt I'd come home. I was with people who had the same drive or the same, I don't know, I'm struggling with not necessarily ambition. And ambition wasn't in my head.
No,
actually.
I sensed that.
I wasn't thinking
You just wanted
about
to be
stardom.
at the party, didn't you? You didn't really...
I was having a ball.
You found your tribe as well.
Yes, yeah, very good. Yes, thank you.
You found your people.
Yes.
So let's just track that then. Let's back up a bit from Colwyn Bay. Is it a gradual rise? You've jumped ahead to Jewel in the Crown, which changed everything. I think.
Yes.
But and without ambition, except I think you had ambition for work,
yes.
but not for fame or glory. You just wanted better jobs, I presume.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I knew I had to get an agent. I can't remember the name of the first agent I had, but he was in the small office at the top of a very steep staircase.
It's always a small office at the top of a very steep staircase.
In a back street off a street just off the Strand.
Yes.
An amazing. He had an old basset hound that smelt. I remember that. Okay, but then I did a tour of a play called "It's a 2 foot 6 inches above the ground world." The title alludes to the height of the average person's genitalia from the ground.
Okay.
Okay.
Every day's a school day.
Indeed. I was an acting ASM, and then they promoted me into acting DSM, Deputy Stage Manager, because I had an old car, so I could drive around and get props and things like that. And I had a few lines. Then I think I was a stagehand on Canterbury Tales for a while, in The Flies,
So you really would take the jobs, even when you weren't
Yes.
acting.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was rare, wasn't it? There weren't many people who were quite as unproud, I suppose.
I don't know. I just think that they weren't as well advised as I was.
No, I agree. Well, it clearly worked. And
Yeah.
when did you start getting the kind of parts that meant you didn't have to be the stage manager anymore, or the deputy stage manager?
Well, I did a pantomime. I was the principal boy. It does happen sometimes.
Yes, of
Principal boy's played by a male. In Sleeping Beauty, I think.
And that was decent money.
And that was reasonably good money, but, twice a day,
Yes.
7 days a week, and my God, you learn.
And did you this relationship between the work and the reward, did you think I need to be on the telly or because that is the next chapter in my story, that's the next stage on this trajectory?
No, I never thought like that, actually, and I don't know how my first television job came up. I don't know how that happened. That it was Edward VII. And up until then, period drama was the prerogative of the BBC. And this was ITV, and with Timothy West as Edward VII. And I played the Duke of Clarence, who was one of the likely suspects, or unlikely suspects, of the identity of Jack the Ripper.
Yes, I remember.
Which did prompt me to. I went down to the East End, and I went to all the sites. I thought I'd do a bit of research. That was my first experience of getting a part. I thought, well, I can find out about this man and so on. But that was my first television. And I did enjoy that. I liked the business of being on a set, and
right,
And
now,
but I was never driven. Because I'm now at the age I'm either playing fathers or grandfathers,
sure.
and I'm working with actors in their 20s of either sex.
Yes.
And my God, the ambition, and and getting something that's going to give them a lot of exposure. Take that exposure, get on a plane, go off to LA or wherever and be a movie star.
Yes.
You know, I never had that cardinal ambition.
And yet it happened, didn't it? What are the
kind of, James?
Well, come on.
No, I'm a working actor.
No, I know you are, but
I'm not a movie star. You know.
No, but but you know, Eddie Murphy, Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, during that period of your life, you were making films with the biggest stars on the planet.
Yeah.
And then of course there's the sort of second wind that comes with Game of Thrones. A whole new generation are exposed to you. It begins with Jewel in the Crown when you were 37 already. This
if you say so.
It says here.
Right. Okay. Right.
And by now, and I know you find this mildly annoying, but you understand why people are curious about it. Had you accepted now that you were more likely to be cast as someone from several rungs up the social ladder than you actually came from? It's just that something about your face or because I know you've played all sorts of parts, but some of the biggest ones have been borderline aristocratic, haven't they?
Yeah. I remember saying to Robert Altman when we did Gosford Park, I said, Bob, I should be downstage. He said, no.
You did tell my mum used to be downstairs.
Not with that face, Charles.
Yeah.
Okay. No. Yes, I have more or less accepted it. Or occasionally, you know, I get the opportunity, but to be a bit gall-blimey.
Yeah.
So, you know, but.
And the parts, I mean, there was the period in Stratford, wasn't there, with the Trevor actors and the Terry actors? And
yes.
you were a Terry actor, not a Trevor actor.
Very much so, yeah.
That was the difference between the toffs and the non-toffs.
Yeah.
That must have been Stratford.
In those days, the RSC, you were part of a family. It was rather wonderful, actually. And I learned a phenomenal amount, and I understudied Alan Howard, who was a fantastic actor, Alan. And I used to listen to him playing with his voice every night, hitting another note, pushing it, you know, and learning Shakespeare so fast. He would cram it in, and because I was his understudy, I would help him with his lines, but he'd just get it into his head. And then, once it's in your head, then you can play with it. Whereas if you don't do that, and you're the kind of actor who likes to learn during rehearsals, then you spend a lot of time trying to remember a line rather than working out what to do with it.
Yes.
Do you know?
I could hear Leonard then.
Yes, indeed.
I could hear echoes of echoes of the Plymouth pub.
Yeah.
And you smash it. I mean, you play Henry V, I think in 1975. You on an RST tour that goes to New York. You've earned your spurs long before you become a household name in normal households. You're known to theatre audiences.
I guess so. I mean, I don't know whether we ever earn our spurs, but yeah, I suppose
You're
so.
playing big parts in big productions.
Yes, okay.
With big companies.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah. And was that satisfying?
Oh yes, of course. Oh yeah. But
did you ever form? Because ambition fascinates me. Because it comes and goes. Some people have loads. Some people don't have any, as you've touched on with younger actors. Did you have parts that you wanted to? Do you think I'd love to have a go at Coriolanus one day? For example?
Oh yes. Yeah. Oh yeah. And I got to the point where I felt a bit like I was banging on the stable door.
Yeah.
You know, I can run now. And I was. The first I did Coriolanus, the play, twice. I played Ophidius, which is Coriolanus' adversary, when Alan was doing Coriolanus, and I was understudying Alan and playing Ophidius. And then I went back to the RSC in 1988 and 89 to play Coriolanus myself, which was fantastic. It's my favourite play.
It's one of mine, actually.
Because there's hardly any subtext.
Yeah.
There it is, and it's
all there. It's all there.
Yeah.
I love
the political plays.
And I like Menenius as well in that.
Oh,
I think
fantastic.
He plays it lovely.
Dear old Graham Crowden, bless him, who's no longer with us, was the most wonderful Menenius. Yeah.
Speaking of fellow cast members, we should mention that the production you're in at the moment sees you on stage with two of your Jewel in the Crown co-stars for the first time in a very long time. Geraldine James and Nicholas Farrell.
Indeed.
Are in the Strindberg. That's tribe again, isn't it? That's nice people who you'd like working with and coming back round again decades later.
Geraldine and I had worked together after The Jewel in the Crown, but not in a very substantial way. And we talked, said, we'd have lunch from time to time. We said, great, if we could find something to do together. And I don't know whether it's my agent or Tom Littler, who runs the wonderful Orange Tree Theatre in Richmond, whether it was his idea. But he said, there's this play. It's a Strindberg play called Creditors. I didn't know it. And I read it and thought, my God, it's an extraordinary play. And then found out a bit about Strindberg. And then agreed to do it with Geraldine. And then Geraldine had done it before, many, many years ago, but actually couldn't remember anything about it. And it was a different adaptation. This was adapted by Howard Brenton.
Yeah.
And brilliant. And then we thought, well, how about Nick Farrell playing the younger man? And so yes, we came together, but Nick and I both independently had decided that we were going to learn this before we started rehearsals. Because I was terrified. It's 15 years since I've done a play. And I think, when I'm 79 now, I think, how's the brain working? So I packed the lines in like Alan Howard used to do, and crammed them in.
How do you pick a job now at this stage? Because I presume you get offered
because
quite...
people say to me, you made some interesting choices. Very, very rarely am I given a choice. Should I do this job, that job, or that job? The choice is either to work or not work.
Is it?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm very envious of actors who say, I don't know what to do. I've had 4 offers. Well, which one am I going to do? No.
But that can't have always been the case, though, can it?
Mostly.
Really?
Yes.
Just sort of, making a film with Meryl Streep one week and then making a film, as I've said, with Eddie Murphy the next week. There must have been some stuff you've said no to.
Yeah, a few years in between.
No, of course. Of course. Well, I didn't mean a week. I was being metaphorical.
I know. I know. Yeah.
And the agent who told you not to go near the James Bond audition because that would be...
Yeah. No, quite seriously. I can't think of an occasion where I've had to choose between one job or another.
Well, that's nice, though, isn't it? Because it sort of leaves
Well, yes, I am a Libran, and if you believe in all that kind of nonsense, Librans are notoriously indecisive.
That's what I mean. The decisions are taken for you. It's a ridiculously broad and deep canon of work that you've done, as I've said. And, of course, you've also made your own film with Judi Dench and Maggie Smith. I sense, again, reading interviews in preparation for this meeting, that meant an awful lot to you.
Of course it did. I was sat on a film set waiting for the cinematographer to finish lighting. Those were the days when they had the leisure of being able to take time. And it was a library set, and I just took this little book of short stories down and read it. I thought, and the images started to drop in front of me, and I thought, and because I like to think I understand the language of a camera because of my time at art school, and I used to take a lot of photographs as well, and I thought, yes, I think I can make a film of this. I'd never written a script before. Well, I had actually. I tried to write a script, but it wasn't great, and so I looked at this story. I thought, I think it didn't take me very long. I knocked off the first 2 or 3 drafts, and then I took it to Judy, bless her. And I don't know how I'd met Jude. We'd met a couple of times, and I thought, right, I'm going to ask her. I went to see her, and she read it and said, this is rather nice. Who are you going to get? I said, well, I want to ask Maggie Smith. She said, yes, ask Mags. So I asked Maggie, and she said, does Jude want to do it? I said, yeah, she does. She said, all right, I'll do it then. She used to call it Lavender Bags. Well, when are we going to do Lavender Bags? But I mean, I hardly directed either of them.
You'd need some nerve, wouldn't you?
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. And of course it was, that's how the money was raised.
Yes.
A piece of cake. I could have directed The Telephone Director with those two. And I got Miriam Margolyes as well.
Yes.
Who's a hoot.
Yes.
I adore Miriam.
So do I. She sat in that chair not long ago.
Oh, bless her. Did she fart?
People like a trooper.
Of course.
People who don't know, Ladies in Lavender was a runaway success.
Yes, it was.
I mean, for people who don't know what film we're talking about.
Sure.
It was a huge success. But I mean, it didn't sort of signal a massive change of career direction for you or anything like that.
No, 2 more things I have tried to get made, but I didn't have Judy or Maggie on board, and it proved notoriously difficult. But then I've got my day job.
Yes.
So.
And if you look back over there, I mean, you'll be a bit like Geraldine James and the Strindberg, won't you? There'll be things you've done that you can't remember doing, I imagine. Not because of any flaws in your memory, but simply because the list of credits is so long. Can I be the 100th person to ask you if you have any particular favourites that you look back on, either because of the impact that it had on your life or because of the relationship you had with the role, on stage or screen?
I did a film that very few people have seen called Kabloonak. And it was the story of how Robert Flaherty, who was known as the father of the documentary, how he came to make a film called Nanook of the North. That was the first commercially successful documentary, right?
Yeah.
And in 1922, and it was released as a second feature with a Buster Keaton film. And to Pathé's astonishment, people were coming out of the cinemas talking more about this movie about little Eskimo people rather than Buster Keaton. And Flaherty was a rather extraordinary man, and I was sent this script that was wonderful. And I was nursing a sprained ankle in Los Angeles at the time from a tennis lesson. I tried for years to play tennis. I'm no bloody good. And this script arrived, and I rang my agent in London. She said, "Well, yes, darling, you'll have to live on a ship in the Arctic for a long time. Probably terrible food, with a bunch of Eskimos." And anyway, I came back to London, met the French director and the French producer. And I lived on an icebreaker on the Bering Sea for about 3 or 4 months, actually. This is before mobile phones. Gosh. So I'd be phoning home via the ship-to-shore phone and faxes. You remember faxes? Mm-hmm. And took a big sort of survival kit of books and my Sony Walkman. Remember Sony Walkmans?
Yes, of course, yeah.
And I would be on the deck of this ship at 3 o'clock in the morning, because the sun doesn't go down, it goes round, listening to Wagner as this icebreaker cut its way through the ice onto the next location, which invariably looked exactly like the one we'd left 2 days ago. I mean, but it was the most extraordinary story, and to spend that amount of time in the Arctic. And then we ran out of winter and picked the film up a year later, when I'd done the film with Arnold Schwarzenegger and a film with Stephen Polyakov, and then picked up this Icelandic movie in Arctic Canada. We'd been in Arctic Russia, and finished it. And actually, it's an extraordinarily beautiful film, and I loved the man I was playing, and it was substantial, and yeah. So that's probably my favourite film. Because of what it did to and for you, not because of anything else. Sure, yes. I mean, it was hardly anybody saw it. Sure. It actually got a prize at the Paris Film Festival, and I got one as well. But it had a very limited distribution. And you can only get hold of it, I think, on a VHS. It doesn't exist on DVD now. That's showbiz, but it's beautiful. Yes. And the scripts keep coming. The Diplomat, Sandman, the year before that, as we say, the Back on Stage. Given that you've never really had ambition beyond thinking it's time I got to play some of these bigger parts now, is there anything you haven't done that you would have quite liked to do, or which you still intend to do? Only I've never really fronted films. I've been major support in films, in Plenty and White Mischief. I think White Mischief is more Greta Skarki's film than mine. But to actually have the responsibility of fronting a film and being in a position where I could perhaps question decisions being made by either executive producers or directors that I didn't necessarily agree with the kind of experience that I've now got under my belt, I think I have the right to have some well-informed opinions. Yes. So to be in a position to voice those opinions is what I would like. That's not bad, is it? No, I suppose not. To look back and think, I wouldn't mind that, because I've done everything else. Yeah, kind of. I mean, I'm sharing a dressing room with Nick Farrell in Creditors, And I was talking to him about variety. And he said, "You've done variety?" I said, "Yeah, I have, actually. I did a split week at the Wyvern Theatre, Swindon. We did toe-to-toe all in the afternoons, and I gave my badger. And in the evening, I was a chorus boy, but I had 2 solo spots. I sang The Man Who Broke the Bank of Monte Carlo and Champagne Charlie. And I supported Hetty King, Sandy Powell. I bet these names don't mean anything to you. Hetty King, Sandy Powell, Fred Emney. You ever know Fred Emney? You really? Oh, James.
Fred Emery?
Fred Emney.
Emney, no, sorry.
Big touch-up with a monocle and a cigar. It was Fred Emney.
Did he play Toad as well?
No, he didn't.
Okay.
No. None of these people were in the
split.
in the toe-to-toe hall.
Right.
But Hetty King was one of 2 very famous male impersonators. And this didn't reflect their sexuality at all. They were both happily married women. It was Vesta Tilley and Hetty King. And Hetty King had been on the stage since she was 9. And I'm talking about 1970 now. She was 89 when she came to Swindon to do this. Have you ever heard of the song All the Nice Girls Love a Sailor?
Yes, of course.
That made Hetty King very famous.
Was that her?
Yeah, and on the day that Philip married Elizabeth and they came out onto the balcony, 19 whenever it was, right? Hetty King was in the Mall amongst that huge crowd of people waiting to see them come out on the balcony, and she started to sing All the Nice Girls Love a Sailor, and the whole Mall started to sing it. She was incredible. And she did that song and a song called Bachelor Days. She'd go off stage, get out of her sailor suit,
Right.
and come back on in a white tie and tails and put a bit of red on her nose and a cigar. And she was a drunk man on the night before he'd married. And he says, "Bye-bye, Molly, bye-bye, Jane. I don't think we'll meet again. I've had to tear up my addresses in case somebody guesses. When they pin that rose on me, heaven's gates will close on me. I'll have got to the stage of a bird in a cage. So bye-bye, bachelor days." Fantastic.
Magical.
You know, wonderful people. And I learned a lot from those people, too.
Of course.
About timing, you know. Yes.
I think I know the answer to my final question. Which is, do you feel lucky?
Yes, my God. Incredibly lucky. This is why I said to somebody recently, I've perhaps not been as choosy as I should have been. I mean, well, no, I know a lot of actors who will sit and wait. Might take 2 years till the right part comes along. Listen, the world is full of people either who don't have a job,
Yes.
or have a job that gives them no more satisfaction than being able to afford a week's holiday a year. You know. So who am I, who's been lucky enough to do a job that I love, to blithely turn down? Well, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that unless it's really, really bad. I will do it and try to do it as best I can.
And find the fun in it.
Yeah. So,
Charles Dance, thank you.
Not at all. My pleasure, James. It's a delight to meet you because I listen to you every morning.
Well.